It was 19 degrees the night I almost died, and I was holding $400 of the best sleeping bag money could buy. That bag had a rating on the label, a number that promised me I'd be fine down past zero. I believe that number the way you believe a thing when you've never been cold in a way that matters. By 2 in the morning, I was shaking so hard my teeth were chipping against each other, curled up under an overpass on the cold side of a city that doesn't need naming, because every city has that overpass. The bag wasn't lying exactly. It just didn't tell me the part that kills you. Cold air isn't what takes a man down out here. Moisture is. The concrete underneath that expensive bag had been pulling the heat out of my body all night long, drinking it straight through the fabric, and the sweat my own body made trying to stay warm had soaked into the insulation and turned it useless. I was lying inside a wet machine that was supposed to save me, and it was quietly doing the opposite. I paid $400 to be betrayed slowly. That's the truest sentence I know. I want to tell you about the thing that actually saved me. It cost $2, and the men who taught it to me had nothing, served this country, and got handed a sidewalk for their trouble. So let's get into it. The men who taught me. I didn't figure any of this out myself. I need you to understand that before anything else, because the internet loves to call this a hack, like some clever person sat down and invented it. Nobody invented it. It got handed down, the way a family hands down a recipe. The man who showed me was older than I am now, a veteran like me, though we never said much about where or when, because out here, that's not the thing that matters. What matters is whether you've got dry socks, and whether you'll watch a man's bag while he sleeps. He'd been on the street longer than some marriages last. His hands were ruined from it. And the first hard, cold night after he found me shivering against a wall, he didn't give me a speech about bootstraps or bad choices. He just looked at me a second, the way you look at someone you've decided not to let die, and walked me 3 blocks to a hardware store dumpster and started teaching. That's the part nobody films. The survival knowledge that keeps unhoused veterans alive through an American winter doesn't come from a manual or a class. It comes from one broken man deciding another broken man shouldn't freeze. It moves person to person, hand to hand, passed quietly between people. The country stopped counting a long time ago. He told me something that first night that I have never been able to put down. He said the gear stores sell you comfort, and the street teaches you survival, and those are not the same thing. He said comfort is what you buy when you still believe someone is coming to help. Survival is what you learn when you understand that nobody is. It took me one winter to stop arguing. Why a trash bag beats the expensive gear survivalists have a proper name for what that old veteran was about to teach me. They call it the vapor barrier principle, and serious cold weather mountaineers use it on purpose, high up where the air is thin and brutal. The homeless veterans who taught me had never heard that term in their lives. They just knew the black bag kept you breathing until sunrise and the nice bag did not. And they had buried enough friends over enough winters to be very sure of the difference. The men on the street arrived at the same science. They just paid for the lesson with funerals instead of tuition. Here is what the $400 bag is built to do. It is built to breathe. It is designed to let moisture escape slowly over a long night inside a dry tent. And inside a dry tent, that is exactly what you want. But a veteran sleeping under a bridge is not inside a dry tent. He is on wet concrete and wet air with the wind finding him. And breathable in that situation just means the cold has been handed a door. The expensive bag lets the ground moisture climb up into your layers. and it lets the warmth wick away into cold, wet fabric because it was engineered to let things pass through. We were not on a camping trip. That gap between what the gear was built for and where we have to use it is a gap men have frozen to death inside. A contractor-grade trash bag does the opposite, and that is the whole point. Plastic does not breathe. It stops the ground moisture cold instead of letting it through, and it traps a thin skin of warm air against your body instead of releasing it. The thing the gear company sells as a feature is the thing that kills you out here. The thing you would throw in the trash is the thing that holds the heat. The system, step by step. So let me actually teach you the thing now, the way it was taught to me on a freezing sidewalk, with cold hands and not much time. And I want you to hold on to something before we start. There is one step in here that men get right while getting another part wrong. And the second mistake undoes everything the first thing earned them. It has killed people who did the hard part correctly. I will show you exactly where it happens. Watch for it. You need contractor-grade trash bags, not kitchen bags. Those tear and they are worthless for this. You want the heavy 3mm construction kind, built to haul broken concrete without splitting. 2 of them at the absolute minimum, more if you can get them. At any hardware store that is about $2, sometimes less. And I want you to hold on to that number because we are going to come back to what $2 really means before we are done. The first bag goes flat on the ground. This is your barrier against the concrete, and it is the layer most people skip, and the layer most people come to regret around 3 in the morning. You lay it down flat. Then, if you have anything at all, cardboard, newspaper, dry leaves, a flattened box from behind a store that goes on top of the ground bag between the plastic and your body. The plastic stops the moisture cold. The cardboard creates dead air, and dead air is insulation, the cheapest insulation there is. The ground will always try to take your heat. This is how you make it work for that heat. The second bag is the one that goes around your body. You climb in feet first, the way you would get into any sleeping bag, and you draw it up around you. Now here is the part that an old veteran drilled into me until I could do it half asleep. The part that separates a survivable night from a night that ends with an ambulance. If a man is lucky enough for one to come, you do not climb into a bare, empty bag. You stuff it. Anything dry and light that traps air goes in there with you. Crumpled newspaper, dry leaves, packing material, every piece of extra clothing you own but are not wearing, plastic shopping bags wadded up loose. You are building insulation around your own body out of garbage, and it works because warmth was never about thickness. It is about trapped air that cannot move and cannot carry your heat away. A trash bag packed full of newspaper around a man's body will hold him through a night that an empty $400 bag will not. I tested both with my own life. The newspaper won. If you have managed to get a second set of bags, you double them up. A bag inside a bag with the stuffing layered between them is warmer than anything I was ever sold in a store. And it cost the price of a cup of coffee. And now we are at the step I told you to watch for. This is where men who did everything else right still do not see morning. It is your head and your breath. You cannot seal yourself inside the plastic. You will suffocate, and out here the cold has killed men that way too. Men who got the warmth part right and the breathing part wrong. So the bag comes up snug around your shoulders and over the head loosely if the wind is truly vicious, but your face stays out in open air, and you breathe outward away, never back into the bag. The moisture from your own breath, if you trap it in there, will soak every layer you built by morning and leave you worse off than when you started. The old vets had a simple rule for it. 4 words they would say like a prayer: body sealed, face free, breath aimed away. Get that wrong and the warmth turns on you. That's the whole system. $2 of plastic, a careful handful of garbage, and one principle that $400 of engineering somehow forgot. Why the street chooses plastic. Now you might be sitting there wondering why a man would not simply carry the good sleeping bag and do both. Use the expensive gear and the trash bag together. It is a fair question, and I will answer it because I learned every piece of the answer the hardest possible way. The good bag gets stolen. You set it down for 10 minutes to find food or use a bathroom, and you come back and $400 has walked off down the block on someone else's shoulder, and there is no one to call about it and no one who would come. The good bag gets wet, and once it is wet on the street, there is nowhere on this earth to dry it. No warm apartment, no machine, no sunny afternoon long enough, so it stays wet and dead weight for days. The good bag is heavy and it is bulky, and a man who carries everything he owns on his back learns very fast to hate weight more than he hates the cold. The trash bag has none of those problems, and it has one more thing going for it that took me a long time and a lot of pride to respect. It is disposable. When it finally soaks through and tears and dies, you do not mourn it. You do not lie awake angry about it. You leave it where it failed and you get another one for $1. Out here, owning something you cannot afford to lose is its own quiet danger. It makes you a target, and it makes you afraid, and fear costs energy you do not have to spare. The plastic is free of all that. It asks nothing of you and it owes you nothing back. A man with a $400 bag has something to protect every minute of every day. A man with trash bags has something that just works. That sounds backwards until you have actually lived a full winter out here. And then it stops sounding backwards and starts sounding like the only honest thing anyone ever told you. And once you understand that, you understand why this $2 system spreads on the street faster than anything a store ever sold. Which makes it strange, does it not, that I called this thing banned to get you here. So let me tell you the truth about that word. The word banned and the truth underneath it. I know the word that brought a lot of you here was banned. I am not going to play games with you about it, because the men who taught me everything never once played games with me, and I will not start now that it is my turn to teach. A trash bag is not illegal. You can walk into any store in this country tonight and buy one. Nobody is going to arrest you for understanding how a sheet of plastic holds a man's body heat. So in the plain sense, no, this system is not banned, and anybody who tells you a survival method got outlawed is selling you a fact instead of a verification. But I would ask you not to click away yet, because there is a much harder truth sitting directly underneath that word. And honestly, it is worse than a ban would be. What gets taken from us is not the bag. It is the chance to ever use it in peace. In city after city, an unhoused veteran who quietly builds himself a warm spot under that overpass will be woken and moved along before sunrise, and his gear, the bags, the cardboard, the blanket, all of it swept into a city truck as garbage while he stands there in the cold watching it go. There are ordinances now, real ones, in hundreds of American cities that make the simple act of sleeping outside a violation, that turn trying to survive the night into something a man can be ticketed and jailed for. And the shelters that do exist turn men away for arriving past curfew, for having a dog they will not abandon, for an old record, or just for being full on the coldest night of the year. So the system itself is not banned. The man is. The country found it far easier to outlaw the sleeping than to ever house the sleeper. It criminalized the symptom and called the problem solved. And if that makes you angry sitting there, then good, it should, because it still makes me angry, and I have had years to make my peace with it and never have. The betrayal that put me here. Let me tell you how a man actually ends up underneath that bridge in the first place, because I think a lot of people quietly imagine it must be one big dramatic bad decision. It almost never is. It's a slow leak. I came home from my service carrying paperwork that was supposed to mean something real. There was a benefit I had earned, with my name printed on it, and I spent the better part of 2 years of my life inside the machine that is supposed to deliver that benefit to a man. Phone trees that loop back on themselves, forms that contradicted other forms I had already filed, an office that lost my file twice, and a tired man behind a desk who was not cruel, just buried alive, just one more exhausted person trapped inside a system too clogged to function. I am not bitter at that man. I am bitter at the thing that built him a job he could not possibly do. While I sat waiting inside that bureaucracy, the rent came due anyway. The code did not pause to check my paperwork. The savings ran dry anyway. The housing list I finally clawed my way onto had a wait measured in years, not months, and winter does not read wait lists. The country had been very, very good at sending me somewhere when it needed me. It turned out to be very bad at the simple work of bringing me home. That right there is the betrayal. It is not a flag and it is not a people. I love both of those things still, honestly and without bitterness. The betrayal is a set of systems all grinding away at once. The VA backlog, the housing wait list, the city ordinance, the corporate landlord who would genuinely rather hold an apartment empty than drop the rent low enough for a working man. Every one of them functioning exactly the way it was built to, and a veteran falling clean through the gap between them, like the gap itself was the design. And when every last piece of all of that had finished failing me, you know who did not fail me? An old homeless veteran with a hardware store dumpster and $2 of black plastic. The system had a budget counted in the billions, and it left me shaking and chipping my teeth under a slab of concrete. He had nothing in this world, and he kept me alive until morning. I have never gotten over the size of that difference. That old veteran who first taught me all of this is gone now. Not violently, nothing dramatic, he just wore out, the way the street wears a man out years and years faster than a house ever would. I think about him most on the cold nights when I'm kneeling to lay that first ground bag flat the way he showed me, and I notice I'm doing it slowly, carefully, almost the way you'd handle something inside a church, because that is what this knowledge has become to me. It is the very last thing a great many of those men had left to give, and they gave it away freely to strangers, asking absolutely nothing back. Soldiers who came home only to be abandoned by something enormous and faceless, and instead of letting that turn them hard, they spent the little they had left teaching the next cold man how not to freeze. I will tell you plainly, there is more genuine honor under that overpass than there is in most of the warm offices that quietly decided men like us belonged out there. So I am passing it to you now the same way it was once passed to me, not as a clever little trick to feel smart about, as something that keeps real human beings alive through the winter that the very people who need it the most are too often swept up and forbidden from using, in a country wealthy enough to fix all of it tomorrow and choosing every single winter not to. If you are watching this and you are warm tonight, I'm genuinely glad of it. I would only ask you to do one small thing with that warmth. The next time your own city holds a vote on where the unhoused are even allowed to exist, the next time somebody near you says the man on the corner simply chose that life, I want you to remember that there was a veteran out there who knew exactly how to survive the cold, and the only thing he could not survive was being treated like garbage for the crime of trying. I learned how to stay alive from men this country threw away like they were nothing. The very least that I can do, the least any of us can do, is make sure you heard them. So before you scroll on, just sit with that a second. There is another story I owe you about what really happens to a veteran's gear when those sweep trucks arrive, but that's for next time. Until then, stay warm and watch out for each other out there.